Today we'll be presenting on a risk assessment for a 6.5 to 7.5 magnitude earthquake in Tangshan, China. I'm Sylvia Lee, and this is presented by Fiona Huang, Matthew Lee, and June Lee. First is the distribution of our workload on this project. And some accessibility features we have are highly accessible color schemes that are easy to view, edited closed captioning, and an upload to YouTube.
The location is Tangshan, China, which is part of the Hebei province. It's located near the north of the China border, and it is located on the Tangshan Fault, which is created by the collision of the Indian and Eurasian plate. This area is characterized by its cold and dry winters, but also hot and humid summers. And although this doesn't directly affect seismic activity, it could affect the aftermath of an earthquake happening. And the most notable earthquake that happened in this region was the one in 1976, which had a magnitude of 7.5. This did happen because the collision of the Indian and Eurasian plate. And this indicates that magnitudes of similar size are plausible and could happen. And there actually have been a lot of magnitude 6 and 6.5 to 7. And this indicates that this area remains active.
Geographical risk factors. The 1976 Tangshan earthquake cites 242,000 deaths, was estimated suggesting the toll might have reached as high as 655,000. Tangshan's role as an industrial hub significantly amplified the disaster's impact. The city was densely populated, and many buildings were unreinforced masonry structures that collapsed during the quake. Industrial towns like Tangshan often experience rapid economic growth, driven by government acquisition of farmlands at low prices and resale to industrialists at much higher values. This practice, while economically beneficial, increases the risk of severe damage during natural disasters like earthquakes, as the hastily developed lands are not suitable for rapid heavy construction. Additionally, Tangshan's development into an industrial center began in 1956, but saw significant urban planning gaps before the earthquake. These gaps contributed to inadequate disaster anticipation and risk management, exacerbating the catastrophe's geographical and economic impacts.
Social risk factors. As an industrial coal mining city, Tangshan would have had many civilians and coal industry workers affected by an earthquake. Before the 1976 earthquake in Tangshan, such a large earthquake was thought to be unlikely in the area. Thus, many of the buildings were unreinforced and unprepared to handle such a large earthquake. So many of the masonry houses in the city were subject to collapsing and killing or injuring people. When Tangshan was rebuilt after the 1976 earthquake, it incorporated much more earthquake precautions. Newer building codes are much more stringent with seismic regulations, and many high-rise buildings now have earthquake dampers. After the 1976 earthquake, the Tangshan Seismological Bureau educated the public about earthquake and earthquake preparedness using exhibits and pamphlets. They also set up monitoring sites in schools, factories, and mines to observe earthquake precursors. And they started practicing earthquake drills to educate the public about what to do during and after an earthquake. As an important socioeconomic establishment, the coal industry in Tangshan would have been affecting many other parts of China if an earthquake would have to occur there. Many railroads and bridges leading to Tangshan would also be damaged, isolating Tangshan from other population centers and isolating other places from the resources in Tangshan.
The immediate impact of the Tangshan earthquake was the ground shock violently, causing buildings and bridges to collapse. The Tangshan earthquake caused a large number of the casualties because it occurs in the densely populated area and the buildings didn't meet modern earthquake resistance standards. At that time, transportations and communications through the region were interpreted, making it difficult for the outside world to communicate with the earthquake area and rescue. More than hundreds of thousands of people will lose their homes, and food will be in short time supplied. Medical resources will be in short supply. According to the statistics, the losses at that time were about 10 billion US dollars today. It took a long time to rebuild local factories, more than 10 years. At the same time, the economy recovery was very slow because it was a center of heavy industry. This also triggered China's reform of the earthquake response and made the response to earthquakes faster. Local resistance needs long-term medical assistance to eliminate diseases caused by the large amounts of dust and
Response protocol. So immediate emergency response to treat injuries and evacuate people would be needed if an earthquake were to occur. A large number of people may be needed to sort through rubble and building collapse to look for trapped survivors. And in the long term, people may need places to evacuate to if their homes are damaged. Before 1976, as we mentioned, in Tangshan, most earthquake-specific emergency responses did not exist. But after the 1976 earthquake, the city decided to rebuild with these measures in place. After the earthquake, the central government allocated funds for disaster relief and reconstruction. And after the city was rebuilt, a lot of changes were made in order to have better response protocol.
So how effective have these been in the past? The response to the earthquake was hampered by inadequate disaster management and the lack of preparation. Despite receiving early signals of the impending earthquake, the government hesitated to issue a warning, fearing it would halt the city's economic momentum. Consequently, when the earthquake struck, Tangshan was largely unprepared. Medical facilities were severely damaged, and the survivors were left to fend for themselves. Many used their hands and makeshift tools to rescue others, retrieve property, and find food amidst the ruins. Makeshift clinics were set up with rudimentary equipment due to the lack of immediate governmental assistance, and also could not access immediate refugee shelter because of the immensely populated Tangshan locality. The ineffective response highlighted the critical need for robust emergency protocols, including immediate and long-term aid, such as proper shelter and medical support for those affected by such disasters.
Yeah, so next I'll talk about some future planning recommendations. Some of these include implementing early warning systems. This is crucial to help people become more prepared in case that an earthquake is happening in this region. Others include strengthening building codes and regulations. This is very important for, infrastructure. This can help mitigate the risk of building or damage to buildings, and also implementing educational programs for the public can be very crucial as well. This can help individuals learn more about the type of hazard happening and how to prepare, and what can be done to reduce the risks. The audience for these recommendations include local and state governments, general public, and honestly, anyone that can be affected by an earthquake happening in this area. Another important thing is following global practices and organizations such as the United States Geological Survey, as well as Japan's National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Prevention. These organizations can help come up with different strategies to help mitigate as much damage as possible for the public in Tangshan, China. And I think partnering and working with these organizations can be crucial for saving many lives and reducing as much damage and risk as possible. So these are some recommendations and things that could be implemented to help the individuals in this community and area in the case of an earthquake happening.
Here is our works cited, and thank you for listening.